I was watching TV in the family room. My son-in-law walked in and switched it off. "Go to your room, old woman. This living room is mine now." My daughter dropped her gaze. I stood up, took my keys, and left without saying a word. The next day, a man in a crisp suit appeared at the front door. He rang the bell. "Welcome to my channel. I share new life stories here every day, and I'd really appreciate it if you hit subscribe and like my video. Now, let's jump back into my story. I'm sure you'll love it if you keep listening till the end." That evening, the remote control clicked and silence hit the family room like a gunshot. I was sitting in my green velvet armchair, which I had bought with the first Social Security check I got after my husband passed away 15 years ago. Fresh coffee cooled on the end table, and the kitchen smelled of peach cobbler. The television softly murmured the news, and this was my quiet time when the joints eased, and I could simply live, serving no one. The front door slammed as if a storm had broken into the house. I didn't look. I knew exactly who it was. Derek walked in like he owned the place. Behind him, my daughter, Lena, carried shopping bags. Her shoulders were slumped, her eyes on the floor as if apologizing for taking up space. I didn't move. Derek stood right in front of the screen, blocking my view. He snorted as he always did when he saw me doing nothing. He picked up the remote and pressed the red button. The screen went dark. "To your room, old woman," he yelled. "I've got the game on. The family room is mine now." The silence became thick. I could hear his short, arrogant breathing, as if his shouting had purchased him a right. Very slowly, I shifted my gaze to Lena. She stood in the kitchen doorway, her knuckles white on the handles of the shopping bags. Our eyes met. I waited for one thing, the simplest thing, for her to say, "Don't you dare talk to my mother like that. This is her house." Lena lowered her head and started adjusting a bag as if something had shifted inside. That gesture struck harder than any scream. Derek's shout, noise. My daughter's silence, betrayal, a cold clarity washed over me. Not anger, not shame, just a clear, icy sobriety. 35 years at the county recorder's office teaches you one thing. Words don't matter. Documents always do. I rose. My knees clicked dryly. In that silence, the sound was like a formal seal. Derek was already sprawling on my couch, unbuttoning the top of his shirt and grabbing a can of soda without even looking at me. In his world, I had long been just part of the furniture. I walked past him and turned into my room, not to lock myself in or weep as they probably expected. I opened the bottom drawer of my dresser, pulled out a stiff leather pouch for bank business, and from the bottom a set of keys and a blue elastic-banded folder. My fingers slid between the rough sheets of paper. A bill of sale, old but valid, a current deed of title. Owner, Celeste M. Everson. The paper was yellowed at the edges. Its power was ironclad. In the mirror, I saw my short gray hair, my glasses on a chain, my linen trousers, and a navy blouse. I looked like the grandma who bakes cookies. That was my main tactic. As long as grandma feeds the wolves, they feel like kings. The minute I closed the lid on the pot, the king's paws turned to putty. I returned to the family room. Derek had already turned on the sports channel and cranked the volume. Lena was clattering dishes, a voluntary silence instead of a stand. I walked towards the front door. My heel clicked on the hardwood floor. Derek turned his head, smirked, and raised his soda can. "Taking a stroll, Celeste?" He sneered. "Don't get lost. At your age?" I didn't answer. I turned the deadbolt. For a second, I looked around the house, the framed print of the Savannah riverfront, the rug I vacuumed every Saturday, my son-in-law's back, my daughter's shadow in the kitchen. I touched the cluster of keys in my pocket. The cold metal was invigorating. I walked out, closing the door quietly,
but firmly, like setting a period at the end of a sentence. Outside, the air was crisp. I wasn't cold. I exhaled, locked the front gate from the outside, walked to the avenue, and hailed a cab that pulled up. Where to? The Grand Hyatt downtown. I took out my phone in the car. My fingers trembled slightly, not from fear, but from power. I scrolled through my contacts to a name I hadn't called in ages, but knew would answer. Andrew V. Sterling, attorney at law. We used to work near each other. Him on property disputes, me on deeds. Celeste, it's nearly 9. What's wrong? I woke up, I said, looking at the city lights. I need your help. I have court tomorrow morning. Why the rush? My mental and property health. I'm listening. I want to evict 2 tenants. But you live with your daughter and son-in-law. Exactly. A pause. He knew me from my signatures on title rejections. Where others saw maybe, I saw absolutely not. What did they do? He yelled, "Old woman, this living room is mine now." My daughter stayed silent. I left and I won't return until they are gone. I understand that's moral abuse at least. But you don't need pity. You need the law, right? The house is mine. They've lived here for 4 years without a lease. All at my expense. I need a notice to quit. I am terminating the gratuitous use of the property and demanding they vacate the home. Personal service is necessary. I'll send my junior associate, Roman P. Cruz, first thing tomorrow. He's quiet, professional, sharp in a suit, straight out of the box. He delivers the news clearly. He'll do. We usually give 30 days. That's fine. And include a warning in the text. 24 hours to understand the reality. And upon vacating, they will be billed for back rent and a penalty for holding over. Accepted. You are determined. I'm wounded, and a wounded woman who knows her rights is dangerous. Prepare the documents. I'll be at your office by 8. I'll sign before court, then send Roman to my house. The taxi stopped at the hotel. The doorman threw open the door with more attention than my son-in-law had shown me in 10 years. Can I help with your luggage? I only have my purse, I said quietly, and the dignity I just reclaimed. The room greeted me with the scent of lavender and clean corners. A large TV was opposite the bed. I turned on my favorite channel and set the volume to my liking. I ordered soup and a glass of Cabernet. I ate slowly. My thoughts were at the house, but they were now my thoughts. I knew their morning routine by heart. Derek sleeps late, grouchy. He's always tired. Lena runs around smoothing his edges. I pictured the door of my house, the intercom button, a confident finger pressing it. This wasn't a call for tea. This was the call of the law. The first gong. I fell asleep quickly and soundly like a person who has taken the wheel. I woke up with the sun, took a shower, the same clothes, but a new posture. I went to Mr. Sterling's office. Signatures, dates, property details. Every stroke of my pen sounded like a final judgment. Roman is heading out. Andrew nodded toward a tall young man with a leather briefcase. 20 minutes and he'll be at your fence. Perfect. I put my bag down and sat in the reception area. I'll wait here. Panic always remembers that it has a mother and a mother-in-law. The coffee from the machine smelled sweet. The clock on the wall whispered, tick-tock. Somewhere over there in my family room, a different legal music was beginning. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't running between the stove and others' whims. I was simply waiting. 9:30. My phone vibrated on my knee. The day had begun. Lena was blinking on the screen. Lena was blinking on the screen. I let it ring 3 times, and only then did I swipe my finger across. Mama, Mama, for heaven's sake. Her voice broke into a shriek. There's a man here, Roman, with a document. Derek is screaming. What is happening? Where are you? I held the receiver away from my ear to avoid his background shouting. Roman is the attorney's junior, I said calmly. Ask your husband to lower his voice. Take the notice, read it aloud, and tell Derek, the old woman is unavailable for screaming today. But it says, eviction notice 30 days. Mama, have you lost your mind? He just Lena, for the first time in years, I am completely sane. Read the paper. Do what it says. The fewer screams, the better. I hit end call. The small red button returned silence to me as easily as flipping a switch on a bedside lamp when I was a child. The office door opened slightly. Andrew V. Sterling peeked over his glasses. Daughter. I nodded. The show has opened on schedule. Roman served the papers. We have the signatures and the attachment inventory. Now we wait. I settled into the reception chair. The vending machine coffee smelled like caramel. The clock on the wall whispered, tick-tock. I looked at the hands, but wasn't thinking of time. I was thinking of how for 4 years I had shrunk myself in my own house to the size of a foot tool so as not to disturb their moods. How I ate the burned edges of pie, leaving the center for the king of the living room. How I watched TV shows with headphones so as not to interfere with their conference calls. How I paid triple the utility bill and stayed silent. I opened my purse and pulled out a sheet folded into quarters, a pension statement, the lifetime payout from my banker husband, a couple of stable investment accounts. The figures stood neatly like soldiers. These figures meant I could live. These figures meant I didn't have to gravel. Next, a printout of transfers. The floor got warm water twice, the rug a stiff brush. The house came back to life with every movement. By evening, I put the kettle on. The silence was not empty, but golden, like fresh wax on the parquet floor. Then a short, polite ring. I knew who it was. Come in, Lena, I said at the threshold. The coffee just brewed. She walked in slowly, looking around. It's beautiful, quiet, warm. It's peach, I nodded. Sit. We sat opposite each other. 2 mugs on the table, a plate of pie. Lena held her mug with both hands, grasping the warmth. I rented a studio apartment, she said, looking at the steam. It's small. The neighbor upstairs likes loud music. The ceiling is low, but it's mine. I pay for it myself. I took on full-time work, and I filed for divorce. The pro bono lawyer is processing the papers. I nodded. A warm, quiet, unsentimental feeling rose inside me. That's the right path, I said. It will hurt. Then it will settle. He says you broke up the family. She smiled faintly. And I realized you just stopped feeding the lie. We were silent. Outside the window, the garden rustled like new sheets. Thank you for saying no, she added, placing her palm over mine. While you were patching the holes, I couldn't hear myself. Hearing yourself is not a luxury, I said. It is order. She inhaled deeply. Mama, can I come over as a guest? No keys, no staying over, just tea and conversation. That's exactly what you should do, I replied. The door is open for guests. It's temporarily closed for tenants. We hugged briefly, an adult embrace. On the porch, she adjusted the strap of her purse and walked toward the gate. She walked straight, not looking back, like a person who chose her own pace. I returned to the family room. The peach walls glowed softly. The notebook was on the end table. I opened a clean page and wrote, Wednesday 4 p.m. sharp tea with the neighbors. Topic, wills, separate accounts, passwords, bring questions, and a notebook. My phone blinked with a message from Zoe. Celeste. Betty is crying. Her son is pressuring her to sign the house over to him. Investment, Mom. I'll buy you a better one later. She's afraid to say no. Afraid he'll get mad. Can we come over tomorrow? Come at 4, I typed. Kettle and papers are ready. I signed the bottom of the page and closed the notebook. The house was clean and warm, and this cleanliness finally had a purpose. Tomorrow, the doorbell would ring, but it would no longer be a disaster. It would be a beginning. By 4 on Wednesday, I boiled the kettle, took out my folder of documents, and placed pens, blank sheets, and envelopes on the table. On the folder cover, I wrote in large pencil letters, Wednesday 4 p.m. The house smelled of peach cobbler and fresh paint. The peach walls seemed warmer than usual in the soft sunlight. Not a show, but order. The bell rang briefly. Zoe arrived first, then Olga, and almost immediately they ushered in Betty, hunched over with red eyes. My son is rushing me to sign the house over to him, she said from the doorway. Investment, Mama. I'll buy you a better one later. I'm scared to refuse, afraid he'll be angry. Sit down. I poured the tea. Let's start simply. Gifting the house is forever. You can't take it back. If you want to leave something to someone, write a will. As long as you are alive, the property remains yours. For a last resort, we can discuss a life estate, but that's careful work. No rushing. Zoe nodded. And don't give passwords to anyone. Not to the kids, not to the grandkids, for their games. Exactly. I slid a sheet of paper toward Betty. Here's a phrase for you to start the conversation. I am not ready to change the owner of the property. To think about it, yes. To sign? No. Your son will push. Repeat the phrase word for word. If he starts yelling, leave the room. Close the door. You only sign papers when your head is calm. Olga snickered. Next, you'll be giving her the lawyer's number. I will. I nodded. It's Roman, Andrew V. Sterling's associate. He doesn't yell, and he reads the fine print quickly. But it's best not to sign anything on emotion or on weekends when the county office is closed. We sat and wrote down short bullet points. Will instead of a gift deed, separate accounts, a receipt for every penny borrowed, prohibition on shared passwords, a power of attorney only limited, and with an end date. I showed them where to find the owner's name on their property tax records. And I explained that staying with Mom for a year turns into a lifestyle after 4 years if you don't call things by their names. Betty initially flinched at every word no, but by the end she straightened up and asked for more tea. Girls, I feel lighter, she said that I'm going home today not to cry, but to talk. We're here every Wednesday, Zoe replied. At 4. Your tea, your questions. They left differently than they had come, not quieter, but more assured. I washed the cups, wiped the table, and threw open the windows. The garden smelled of wet grass. The house felt light. Lena stopped by at 8. She knocked like a guest. Can I come in? Tea still warm. She took off her jacket, walked over to the peach wall, and ran her hand over the paint. It's beautiful, she said quietly. Warm. A house should be warm. Everything else is extra. We sat down. She held the mug with both hands, taking the warmth. I was at the lawyer's, she said, looking straight ahead. The divorce is progressing. Full-time work is steady. I don't want supplementary cards for milk anymore. I pay myself. But sometimes, can I come over as a guest? No keys, no staying over, just tea and conversation. That's exactly what you should do, I replied. The door is open for guests. For tenants, it's permanently closed. That's not cruelty. It's a rule. She nodded, thought for a moment, then smiled slightly. You know what? I miss your no. I spent my whole life learning your yes. And now I'm learning your second word. The no is not about offense. I said it's about boundaries. Yours, mine. Any adults. We sat in silence. In the kitchen, the clock ticked softly. Outside the wind sighed, swaying the rowan tree. Lena stood up. "Thank you, Mama," she said, hugging me briefly like an adult. "If you hadn't turned off the utilities that day, I never would have heard myself." "Hearing yourself is adult life," I replied. "Go on. I have a meeting tomorrow at 4. Don't let me down in front of the neighbors." She smiled and left. Her step was steady without looking back. In the hall, an unknown number blinked on the nightstand. I could recognize those calls even without a name. I almost reached for it but stopped and calmly pressed block. There is much news in life, but taking calls about other people's crises is not my obligation. I walked through the house, kitchen, hall, family room. My documents were neatly stacked on the shelf. The Savannah riverfront print was hung where it was comfortable for me. In my study, a clean notebook. I sat down and opened it. On the first line, I wrote the house, the owner's story. Not for Lena, but for myself and for those who are still sitting in their green armchairs, afraid to pick up the remote. I wrote simply, how fear disguises itself as care, how habit drowns out your voice. How one phrase, "to your room, old woman," exposes the whole scheme, how documents give you back your spine, and how unplugged internet can suddenly turn on your brain. I wrote that you cannot give away yourself or your house, not out of love, nor out of pity, that living together without respect is not family, but a hostage situation. And that a timely no saves better than 1,000 yes. Then I put the notebook away in the drawer, returned to the family room, and ran my palm over the back of the green armchair. I sat down. The remote control lay on the end table, the most ordinary black device. I held it in my hand. It was no longer a symbol of someone else's power, just a thing. I turned on the TV and found the music. The violin played purely without hesitation. No footsteps from the hall. No turning off. No to your room. I sat with my eyes closed, listened, and without rushing increased the volume by 1 notch. Exactly as loud as I liked it. Not quieter, not louder. "Enough," I said aloud. And suddenly I understood that the word meant much more now. It meant I was adult enough to set conditions in my own home. It meant I had enough strength not to save those who weren't asking for salvation, but for cards and square footage. It meant I had lived long enough to understand a simple truth. Ownership is not just about keys and deeds. It's about the right to choose the silence, the people at your table, and the volume of the music. I turned off the TV and listened to the house. It was breathing steadily. The garden darkened outside the window. A branch twitched somewhere. Water clinked in a pipe. Nothing dramatic, just a simple life that I was finally not renting out. In the hall, my beige blazer hung on the hook. I adjusted the lapel, fixing a small detail so it wouldn't build up into a bigger problem. The keys jingled on the nightstand. The metal was warm. There were no other bundles of keys next to mine. In the notebook for tomorrow, it was written, Wednesday 4 p.m. sharp. Wills and passwords. I closed the cover, set the kettle for the morning, and turned off the light. The house was mine, but most importantly, I was home again. And in my life, just like on the remote, the volume is now regulated by me. I'm really glad you're here and that I could share my story with you. If you liked it, show me by liking the video and subscribing to my channel. Let's see how many of us there are. Write in the comments which city you're watching from and what time it is. I'm so curious to know where all you wonderful people are tuning in from. If you want to support me a little extra, you can also send a small donation. I share new life stories for you every single day. And now, 2 of my most popular stories will pop up on the screen so you can choose what to watch. On the second floor in a quiet corner of the mall, I found a small cafe with warm lighting and soft wooden chairs. The smell of fresh bread and roasted beans filled the air. I ordered a bowl of lentil soup and a slice of buttered toast. While waiting, I placed my purse on the table and folded my hands. The calm around me made room for thoughts I had been pushing aside for years. All those mornings of walking on tiptoe so Derek could sleep in. All those evenings of watching my daughter shrink herself until she barely existed. All those weekends when my house felt like a place where my presence required permission, the soup arrived. Steam curled gently from the surface. I ate slowly, each bite grounding me. The world outside kept moving in its usual rush, but inside me, something had settled. A decision, a line drawn, a boundary that had waited far too long. The metal was warm. There were no other bundles of keys next to mine. In the notebook for tomorrow, it was written, Wednesday 4 p.m. sharp. Wills and passwords. I closed the cover, set the kettle for the morning, and turned off the light. The house was mine, but most importantly, I was home again. And in my life, just like on the remote, the volume is now regulated by me. I'm really glad you're here and that I could share my story with you. If you liked it, show me by liking the video and subscribing to my channel. Let's see how many of us there are. Write in the comments which city you're watching from and what time it is. I'm so curious to know where all you wonderful people are tuning in from. If you want to support me a little extra, you can also send a small donation. I share new life stories for you every single day. And now, 2 of my most popular stories will pop up on the screen so you can choose what to watch. On the second floor in a quiet corner of the mall, I found a small cafe with warm lighting and soft wooden chairs. The smell of fresh bread and roasted beans filled the air. I ordered a bowl of lentil soup and a slice of buttered toast. While waiting, I placed my purse on the table and folded my hands. The calm around me made room for thoughts I had been pushing aside for years. All those mornings of walking on tiptoe so Derek could sleep in. All those evenings of watching my daughter shrink herself until she barely existed. All those weekends when my house felt like a place where my presence required permission, the soup arrived. Steam curled gently from the surface. I ate slowly, each bite grounding me. The world outside kept moving in its usual rush, but inside me, something had settled. A decision, a line drawn, a boundary that had waited far too long. My phone buzzed again. Lena. This time, a shorter message. Please just talk to me. I read it twice, but no response formed. Not out of cruelty. Out of necessity. Some conversations cannot begin until silence has done its work. I slipped the phone back into my purse. There was a small window near my table. Through it, I watched people carrying shopping bags, holding hands, moving from store to store with easy, simple purpose. It struck me how easily people moved when they felt welcome in their own lives. I had not felt that in my own home in a long time. A young waiter passed by and paused. Everything all right, ma'am? Do you need anything else? I shook my head. I'm fine. Thank you. He smiled and walked away. Such simple kindness, and yet it felt like more respect than I had received in years. When I finished eating, I paid the bill and stepped back into the mall's bright hallway. My heels tapped steadily, the sound matching the rhythm inside me. Purposeful. Clean. Awake. As I walked toward the exit, I noticed a tall mirror near the escalators. For a moment, I stopped in front of it. The woman looking back at me did not seem small. Her shoulders were straight. Her eyes were clear. Her clothes fit her like she belonged inside them. For years, I had felt like a shadow in my own home. Now the shadow had stepped aside. Outside the mall, the day was bright and warm. A light breeze brushed across my cheek, carrying the scent of fresh dough from a nearby bakery. I checked the time. Roman would have already delivered the notice. Derek would have already shouted. Lena would have cried. The neighbors might have peeked through their blinds. Chaos has its own schedule, but peace does too. I took a slow breath and began walking toward the bus stop. No rush, no panic. Just movement. Forward movement. A bus arrived sooner than expected. I boarded and sat near the window. The seat was firm but comfortable. As the bus rolled through the city, I watched familiar streets slide past. Parks, small shops, children with backpacks, seniors walking dogs. Life in its ordinary flow. When the bus turned a familiar corner, my chest tightened. We were passing near my street. For a moment, I faced temptation. Should I step off? Walk past my house? Peek at the windows? No. The old me might have. The new me had no reason to. The law had already knocked on the door. My presence was not needed. My strength lay in distance. I remained seated, hands folded neatly in my lap. 2 stops later, I pulled the cord and stepped off near a quiet neighborhood park. Children played on the swings, their laughter floating through the air without a single shard of cruelty. I sat on a bench beneath a wide oak tree. Its branches spread out like open arms, steady and assuring. Across the grass, 2 little girls played catch with a bright yellow ball. They ran without fear of being scolded. They laughed without checking anyone's mood. For a brief moment, I wondered if Lena had ever felt that free. Or if, from childhood, she had already learned to apologize too easily. I leaned back and let the sunlight warm my face. My phone buzzed again. This time, Derek's name lit the screen. I turned it face down on the bench next to me. Silence isn't revenge. Silence is self-respect. A short while later, the phone buzzed again. A voicemail. Then another. Then a message. What do you think you're doing? Come home right now. You're making a mistake. We're family. I exhaled slowly. Interesting how people remember the word family only when their comfort is threatened. A dog barked playfully nearby. Its owner laughed. The world kept turning in its gentle, careless way. I picked up the phone, turned it over, and unlocked it. Not to read the messages, but to check the time. Almost noon. I had an app. I stood and left the park, walking along the quiet street lined with elm trees. Their leaves rustled softly, like a whisper that everything would eventually settle where it was meant to settle. A small bakery caught my eye. Its window displayed warm rolls, cinnamon twists, and pastries dusted with powdered sugar. I walked in. The bell above the door chimed softly. Good afternoon, the woman behind the counter said. She had short hair, a bright smile, and flour on her apron. Afternoon, I replied. Could I have 2 butter rolls and a tea? Of course. While she prepared the tray, I looked around. The bakery smelled like comfort. Like Sunday mornings long before Lena grew up. Before Derek entered her life. Before my house became a place where my footsteps felt too loud. The woman set the tray down. That'll be $4.60. I paid and sat at a small table by the window. The butter rolls were warm, soft, perfectly golden. I tore a piece off and tasted it. Simplicity. Peace. A reminder that small things can hold entire worlds. As I finished my tea, another thought surfaced quietly. The man in the suit. Roman. He had delivered the papers today. But the part that would come next. That was mine to handle. Not with shouting. Not with threats. Not with cruelty. With calm, simple truth. I stood, thanked the woman, and stepped back onto the sidewalk. The afternoon sun had begun its slow descent. Long shadows stretched across the pavement. In the distance, I heard the faint hum of traffic, steady and unbothered. I walked toward the main road and called for a cab. Within minutes, a car pulled up. I got inside, closed the door gently, and sat back. Where to? The driver asked. I hesitated. Not because I didn't know, but because the next step felt symbolic. The Grand Hyatt, I said. Same as yesterday. As the cab pulled away, I watched the city pass by. People crossing streets, riding bicycles, sitting outside cafes, talking on phones. The metal was warm. There were no other bundles of keys next to mine. In the notebook for tomorrow, it was written, Wednesday 4 p.m. sharp. Wills and passwords. I closed the cover, set the kettle for the morning, and turned off the light. The house was mine, but most importantly, I was home again. And in my life, just like on the remote, the volume is now regulated by me. I'm really glad you're here and that I could share my story with you. If you liked it, show me by liking the video and subscribing to my channel. Let's see how many of us there are. Write in the comments which city you're watching from and what time it is. I'm so curious to know where all you wonderful people are tuning in from. If you want to support me a little extra, you can also send a small donation. I share new life stories for you every single day. And now, 2 of my most popular stories will pop up on the screen so you can choose what to watch. On the second floor in a quiet corner of the mall, I found a small cafe with warm lighting and soft wooden chairs. The smell of fresh bread and roasted beans filled the air. I ordered a bowl of lentil soup and a slice of buttered toast. While waiting, I placed my purse on the table and folded my hands. The calm around me made room for thoughts I had been pushing aside for years. All those mornings of walking on tiptoe so Derek could sleep in. All those evenings of watching my daughter shrink herself until she barely existed. All those weekends when my house felt like a place where my presence required permission. The soup arrived. Steam curled gently from the surface. I ate slowly, each bite grounding me. The world outside kept moving in its usual rush, but inside me, something had settled. A decision, a line drawn, a boundary that had waited far too long.